Hey everybody, it's Annabelle and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at some orchid updates, some flower spikes and just some little things that are making me happy at the moment that I wanted to share with you guys. So we've got to the stage where I don't think I can really pull out every orchid in bloom to show you. I can kind of show them all on grow room tours, which I did one of recently, which I'll link up in the corner and down below. So I've just pulled out a few of the orchids that I feel are really like highlights at the moment, that are really making me happy, some of my favourites that are doing something that I can show you guys. And I hope that that's an okay format. I think some of them are quite exciting. So with that said, let's just get straight into it. So I'm going to be splitting this video up into categories. We have a couple, I think, in each category, so it works quite nicely doing it this way. And we're going to start off with everybody's favourite, I think, the Phalaenopsis. And these are mainly summer blooming hybrids or primary hybrids. So first of all, we're going to start off with the Phalaenopsis Samera. Phalaenopsis Samera is a beautiful primary hybrid between violacea and bellina, two species that are renowned for their fragrance, and this carries through to the Samera. The Samera has a wonderful cinnamony fragrance that inherits from the violacea, but it also has a floral note. The bellina is more of a citrusy fragrance, so I'm not sure where it gets the kind of more floral combination from, but it's a really beautiful fragrance. And personally, I find it nicer than either parent, although I am very partial to the violacea cinnamon fragrance. One of my favourite fragrances on a orchid actually, but the Samera fragrance is just much nicer in that it's more complex. It's not just a hit of cinnamon, it's got a lovely kind of undertone to it that's really lovely. My collection emphasises mainly fragrant orchids now. Those are what really excite me, and new fragrances really excite me. So I find the Samera a really wonderful orchid for that reason, in addition to the really stunning flowers that you get, which I actually think again take the best traits from both parents and put them together. It does more closely resemble the bellina, but just with a slightly more interesting shape, I feel personally, and a little more interesting structure and coloration. There are plenty of bellina hybrids you can get that'll have a similar look to this though, so it's not unique in that department. I guess what it makes it unique is that it inherits that fragrance from the violacea, which is one of my favourites, and it's just really easy to grow, I find. Now I find bellinas a little bit easier to grow than violaceas, even though they were once classed as the same species. That could just be an individual thing that I've got with the orchids in question. The Samera I find to be very easygoing. The flowers are not tiny. For a summer blooming Phalaenopsis, they're reasonably sized and they pack a bit of a punch. They're sequential bloomers, so what they will do is they make kind of 1 to 2 buds at a time, and those flowers maybe last 3 to 4 weeks, and then they fade and they start to produce new flowers along the flower spike. Something else that I really enjoy about the Phalaenopsis Samera is the beautiful foliage. It has wonderful glossy rippled leaves that remind me of lily pads, and these leaves can grow quite large. This isn't a miniature orchid by any means. I have seen people refer to the violacea as more of a compact growing Phalaenopsis, and it's true that the summer bloomers will never achieve the massive size that some of the complex hybrids can achieve, especially those with gigantea in them, but I have seen these get pretty big, and I'm hoping that I can get some nice big leaves because I love some big Phalaenopsis leaves. So that is the Phalaenopsis Samera, currently with 2 flowers. It's been blooming for quite a while, extending the spike along, and it'll do this for pretty much the rest of the year, and it'll probably stop doing this around the sort of late autumn time. They don't particularly like the cooler temperatures. This is something that's quite specific to the Holcostylis subgenus of Phalaenopsis. They have it kind of hot and humid year round where they're from. They don't experience much in the way of seasonal temperature differences. So in the home, you can notice that they lag a bit over winter. If that's the case in your environment, then it might be worth putting them on heat mats if you don't want to put them in a warmer location in the home, and that'll just keep them in active vegetative growth year round. I repotted this one on camera with you guys a little while ago, and it's doing great. Currently have 4 spikes, but it's only blooming from 2 of them currently. They can keep their spikes for many years, so it's worth not cutting them off. So that is the beautiful Phalaenopsis Samera. Next up we have the Phalaenopsis bellina, variety alba, crossed with Phalaenopsis tetraspis C1. This produces this wonderful colour combination of watermelon, peach, mango, tropical fruit cocktail blooms. I think they're absolutely beautiful. They inherit some of the citrusy fragrance from the bellina, but it's nothing like the Samera. Citrusy and slightly grassy, and you won't really notice it until you stick your nose in it. What I really wanted to show you on this was just how many flower spikes and buds it has made for me. I got this one not blooming yet from Orchid Garden last summer, and we have so many flowers. I'm just completely blown away. This is such a hard-working hybrid, and the flowers are just beautiful. There is quite a lot of seedling variation from this variety, so if you want to get one particular bloom, you may have to buy a few. One that I wanted was more of a kind of elongated flower shape, so I've actually got 3 of these, and they all bloom out very slightly differently. This is the most mature plant I have, and just the bud display on this is beautiful, and I just love the bud colour. It's like this wonderful salmony watermelon pastel colour that I just think is beautiful. It's quite a narrow leaf form compared to the Samera, which I think it gets from the tetraspis potentially. This one's kind of a bit messed up in the leaf department. When I got it, it's got lots of like mottled leaves with chlorosis that are kind of twisting all in the wrong directions, but it's made some new leaves for me, and I'm hoping that it kind of eventually covers up these less than attractive looking ones. So at the moment we currently have 6 flower spikes on the go at once, and when all of these buds open, it's going to be a beautiful display all around. The flower spikes are kind of spread out, so it's kind of one of those ones that you're going to see from all angles. It's not going to be one that you can just put on a shelf and have it front facing and all the spikes facing in the same direction. So that limits the display a little bit, but at the same time, you can't be fussy when you've got this many flower spikes, can you? Really beautiful plant, really hard-working and vigorous. And that is the Phalaenopsis bellina alba crossed with tetraspis C1. Next up we have the absolutely adorable Phalaenopsis Shu's Glad Kid blue variety. This is the closest to a blue that I've actually seen on a Phalaenopsis. The lip is kind of a royal blue indigo type of colour. It's not a true blue, it is more purpley, but it is just so beautiful. I absolutely love it. I think it's the cutest thing, and the little freckles on the flower and the saturation on the lip. It's just the most adorable little plant I've ever seen. This one initially did very well for me, but it has produced a few smaller sized leaves as it's been adjusting, which are now getting bigger and bigger. So it's on the right track. The pot is full of roots, so I'm hoping that it just continues to grow bigger and bigger leaves, because it has these wonderful kind of narrow form silvery leaves. Really are quite wonderful, and the plant itself is very easygoing. It's flowering very easily and very freely. The flowers are quite small, but they're just so cute. White with little purple freckles and this kind of indigo coloured lip that is just absolutely adorable. So that is the Phalaenopsis Shu's Glad Kid blue variety, and it does inherit a very slight fragrance from the violacea in its parentage, but not overpowering and won't fill the room. But for now it's nicely fragrant, and sometimes this fragrance does intensify with subsequent bloomings or the longer they've been open, so I'm looking forward to seeing if it does intensify. Next up we have the DTPS Purple Martin, which is a hybrid that is 75% violacea and also has Dorytis or Phalaenopsis pulcherrima in its parentage. So this one inherits the sequential blooming trait of the Phalaenopsis violacea, but produces multiple flowers like the other parents. Unfortunately, it does lack a fragrance, maybe a very slight fragrance there, but nothing particularly strong and nothing that I can really put a finger on or detect easily. So that is kind of a downside. Some of the multifloral parents that you can hybridize with violacea with, it doesn't carry through the fragrance of the violacea. So in theory, the idea of having a multifloral kind of more clustery flower display with some of the violacea fragrance should mean that you get a more intense fragrance, because when you hybridize violacea with other Phalaenopsis, you often get that cinnamon fragrance coming through, but it just doesn't seem to carry through for this guy. It's a beautiful orchid though, and it has wonderful sparkly blooms that I just love. So that's the DTPS Purple Martin, and I've been told that mine is the blue form. I'm not totally sure on that though, I just bought it as the standard form. Next up we have one of my show-stopping Cattleyas, and this is the Cattleya guttata crossed with velutina. The velutina gives it this wonderful lip and the guttata gives it the spotting, and together I think the combination brings out the best from both species parents in this primary hybrid. It's a really wonderful orchid, but the reason you would get it is maybe not even just the appearance. The fragrance is the most intense, wonderful fragrance that any of my Cattleyas have, and this is my favourite Cattleya. I know I say that about a lot of orchids, but in terms of the Cattleya category, this is the one that I get excited every time it blooms, just because of that fragrance. It's like a wonderful cherry, honey, mentholy, almost like a cough syrup, but not medicinal at all. Wonderful kind of cherry, honey scent that just fills the entire room. Just bringing it up from the grow room into the filming area, the whole room already smells of this orchid. It's wonderful, and I think a must-have just for the fragrance alone for anyone who's really into Cattleyas. I think it gets this fragrance from the velutina, from reports that I've seen on the velutina fragrance. So if you can't find this hybrid, then the velutina probably has a very similar fragrance. It isn't a small orchid, as you can expect with many bifoliate species Cattleya. This primary hybrid is rather huge. The flowers themselves are waxy, rigid, glossy and firm. They aren't particularly long lasting. Last time this orchid was in bloom, it produced 2 flowers for me and they only lasted about 3 weeks. That's pretty good for some Cattleyas, but not amazing compared to others. There are some Cattleya species that are longer lasting than others, and I think the guttata and the velutina are not particularly long-lasting Cattleyas, but 3 weeks is pretty good going for a Cattleya, and for this fragrance for 3 weeks, that's pretty much an amazing deal, and I will take it. It does only bloom once a year for me. Last year the new growth was smaller than this year, so it is progressing, but it has only produced 2 buds, which is the same as it did last year. So I think that that is probably a 2 or 3 flower limit for this particular hybrid, but it's just beautiful, and the shape of it to me is so elegant as well. It's just a wonderful, wonderful orchid and my favourite Cattleya. So if you do see this hybrid come up and you're into Cattleyas, I would love for you to get it and feel the same way about it that I do. And if you see the velutina or the guttata come up, or you have them, pop a comment down below and let me know what their fragrance is like, because I think it is the velutina that's giving off this incredible scent, but it could be contributions from both parents. So that is the Cattleya guttata crossed with velutina. Wonderful primary hybrid of 2 species bifoliate Cattleyas with an amazing fragrance. Next up we have the majestic RTH Shu Glory Happy Holiday. I got this one in a haul from Schwerter just over a year ago, and this is the 4th time that it's bloomed for me. It's bloomed for me mostly from new growths with sheaths, but the first time it didn't produce a sheath. It's quite a complex hybrid with quite a lot of species in its parentage, including Cattleya dowiana, as you can see from the striations on the lip. Now, one thing I would say about this is the clonal variety Happy Holiday is pictured with wonderful white striping along the petals, and for some people it blooms out like this and then white striping kind of fades inwards. For me, 4th blooming and nothing, no white striping at all. I was having a discussion with someone about this though, and they did show me a picture a week later where their initially just open bloom looked like this, and then over a week the white striping faded in along there, and that's never happened for me, unfortunately. So I think that it could be something that's heavily environmentally influenced, as has been suggested before. Apparently some of the Laelia family have a tendency to change colour according to environmental conditions, or it could just be a slightly unstable meristem clone, I guess, because this is the named variety Happy Holiday, so it should be a meristem clone. There shouldn't really be any seedling variation if the genetics are kind of carrying through truly. So I don't know. Let me know if you have any ideas about this, because I do think it's an interesting case where some people are getting the Shu Glory Happy Holidays with the white stripes and some people are getting this flower. And in fact, on Orchid Roots Blue Nanta site, there is an image of this hybrid looking exactly like mine. So I find that interesting. I think predominantly you're going to get white stripes if you buy this, but be aware there is a chance that you'll buy it for the white stripes like I did and end up with a pale yellow Cattleya with a Dowiana lip with no fragrance. Just, you know, just putting it out there, if you're buying it specifically for that white striping, maybe try and get one that's actually being pictured the bloom of, like on an eBay listing or something like that, where you can actually see the bloom of the orchid that you're buying, because I was a little bit let down by this. It's a beautiful flower nonetheless, but you know, when you've got an idea in mind that you're buying a meristem clone and you will get a flowering as pictured and you don't, it's a little bit disappointing. It's not the end of the world and these things happen. It's not like I've been sold a wrong ID, but you know, just a slightly disappointed with the bloom. Would have preferred some beautiful white stripes, but there you go. Anyway, it's a wonderful orchid, very vigorous. It's bloomed for me 4 times in a year, so you definitely give it points for being hard working, and it's now a pretty huge specimen, so I am happy with it. Would have preferred some white striping. What can you do? So that's the RTH Shu Glory Happy Holiday. Next up, we've got the Vandaceous family of flowering orchids in my grow room at the moment. Now, I've talked a lot about my Mimi Palmer hybrids across the Pine River Pink, and you can see that in my last video, and that one is still in bloom. We're talking like 3 months now. But something really exciting that happened since is my Renantanda Heiko Greffier, which is a cross between Renanthera and Neofinetia, now Vanda falcata. And it's opened with an even more impressive display than the last time. This one can bloom at any time of year apparently, because it's already bloomed for me once this year, earlier in the year, and it's already blooming again. It's just super vigorous and I love it. The colours remind me of a sunrise. It's just beautiful. I love these Renanthera and Neofinetia hybrids, and I love that in this case the shape is really heavily influenced by the Renanthera parents. The other orchid I'm going to talk to you about in a second is my Holcostylis MS Sunlight, which is the Orchids gigantea and Holcoglossum flavescens cross. First of all, we'll focus on the flowering because that one isn't flowering, it's just a little update on it. So, Renantanda Heiko Greffier. Where do I start with this stunning, elegant, majestic flower? They're quite small, as you can see, many flowers clustered on quite a long spike, and they have this wonderful little baby spur that I think they get from the Neofinetia, which is just super cute. Their lip is adorable, wonderful kind of magenta pink colour with a fuchsia area around the pollinia, and just fading out to a wonderful kind of peachy coloration on the actual flower. No fragrance, unfortunately. Some Neofinetia or Vanda falcata hybrids do inherit that fragrance and some don't, and unfortunately the Renanthera parent of this isn't fragrant and it seems to have taken after that. When the blooms first open, they kind of go this colour that makes you think they're blasting. They go a browny colour and they first open this sort of orangey tan coloration and then fade to the more peach colour. So they do change colour over time, and as they begin to fade, they turn more and more white. They last for several weeks. This one's already been open about 2 weeks, and I think last time I remember it flowering for about a month. So it is quite a long-lasting flower. It would be even better if there was a fragrance, but it blooms multiple times a year, so that's a bonus. And it's a very, very compact growing orchid, very fast growing, and it also very vigorous. It put out new roots into Sem-hydro for me, no problems at all. It's actually in self-watering, not Sem-hydro, with leca, and it's doing super well. So that is the Renantanda Heiko Greffier with the cutest little lip that you will ever see. Isn't it adorable? And I love how it kind of reminds me of a jumping jack or someone jumping. It's just really cool, and I love how the sepals kind of curve backwards on themselves. It just makes them look so elegant, in my opinion. The whole plant, for reference, as you can see, this flower spike is actually bigger than the plant itself, which is a very compact growing orchid. You'll never run out of space for this. It'll only ever grow high rather than width-wise. So that is Renantanda Heiko Greffier. Just a quick update on my Orchids gigantea crossed with Holcoglossum flavescens, which is Holcostylis MS Sunlight. This one has grown so much for me. I got it as a seedling and it's just done fantastically in Sem-hydro. It doesn't enjoy dry top layers, so I have got a top layer of non-porous pebbles on, which just keeps it more moist in the root department. I've had to repot this one on camera with you guys, which I'll put a link up to in the corner and down below in the description. We've not got any roots poking out. Oh, we've got one there. Oh, and a big one there actually. So we do have roots coming to the edge of the pot since the repot. And I actually repotted it since that repot because it grew out of the pot again. I keep having this problem with it where it spikes, and every time it produces a spike it ends up getting too big for its pot, and I repot it and then it aborts the spike. And this is the third or fourth time it's tried to spike for me now. The pot size is good, the environment's now stable. Hope for the best, because if this one blasts then I don't know what I will do. I guess let it keep trying, because I love the plant. I love how compact it is and chubby at the same time. It gets that kind of chubby Orchostylis gigantea look to its leaves, combined with the kind of narrow form of the Holcostylis in it. So it's just a beautiful hybrid. It's a beautiful combination of two species parents, and I think the flowers are going to be wonderfully fragrant. Orchostylis gigantea, not my cup of tea in the fragrance department, but arguably one of my favourite orchids overall, and one that grows extremely well for me in self-watering leca. Holcostylis flavescens, not one that I've ever smelt, but reported to be fragrant. So I'll be super excited if this spike does make it. Please make it, and see what it looks like. So that is the Holcostylis MS Sunlight. Next up, we're going to talk Angraecoids, and I only have two in this category. I do have a third spiking, which is the Angraecum Leonis again, but wanted to do an update on one that I'm excited about, and also one that you guys have actually seen very recently, the Angraecum calceolus. So let's start off with the calceolus. So the Angraecum calceolus is one that I bought in an eBay haul from what I would argue was one of my best ever eBay purchases. I'll link that up in the corner and down below. You can see the new roots kind of exploding out of it at this point. It had spikes when I purchased it, so these were not bloomed by myself. They were already spiking when I purchased it. However, the buds hadn't formed yet, so it's budded in my care. And the flowers are just absolutely adorable. No fragrance, unfortunately, and very tiny, not a massive display. I can actually imagine that this might be a great parent to use in a hybrid with another Angraecum, because of the kind of floriferous nature and the fact that it branches its spikes as well, which is really interesting. So the many kind of multitude of little flowers here could be a potential for a really great hybrid, I think, with a larger flowered fragrant Angraecum. What do you guys think? But I think the flowers themselves are just so cute. I love them. So that is the Angraecum calceolus. Proven to be a very vigorous plant for me so far, although I haven't had it in my care too long. Next we have the Angraecum Lady Lisa, which is a primary hybrid between Angraecum Scottianum and Magdalene, and this is the first time it has ever spiked for me, and I'm super amazed at the size of the nectar spur. My goodness, this is going to be an absolutely huge flower. Now, I've had this orchid from a seedling. It does amazingly in Sem-hydro. Had it for several years now, and it has never bloomed for me, and pretty much as soon as I moved it started spiking. So I think that the reputation that Angraecums have for liking night temperature drops really is well founded, at least in my experience, because I've had this so long and it's definitely been blooming size for a long time and never bloomed for me. I've been, over the last year, I think I was just constantly checking in leaf sheaths to see if it would spike, and it didn't. And this year it's just blowing me away with the spike that it's produced. I know there are only 2 flowers, but for me this is super exciting. It is its first blooming. There are no previous spikes on the orchid. I bought it as a kind of, not seedling, but very young plant. And aren't you amazed at the flowers? All I can say is, oh my goodness, that nectar spur. It's absolutely huge. It's incredible. So that is the Angraecum Lady Lisa, and keep your fingers crossed for me. This one has been a little bit of a problem orchid for me in terms of leaf tip blackening, so I think it does like quite a lot of calcium in its diet. Although, having said that, since I've moved it to the new place, the leaves are coming through completely clear, which hasn't ever happened to me. I've always had to cut leaves. So maybe it is just that night temperature thing. Maybe it's a slightly cooler grower. But yeah, first new leaf to come in without any black marks at all on it. Usually they come in with a little bit of blackening at the very leaf tip, which does make me think that it is calcium related. But the fact that it stopped without me changing its diet at all is making me question that a little bit. And the fact that I upped its calcium and it never rectified until I moved it to an environment where it gets large day-night differentials. So who knows, but I'm so excited for this. So that's the Angraecum Lady Lisa. And those are some of my orchid highlights for this month. Blooms, spikes, little updates, and the things that are getting really excited at the moment in my grow room. The highlight of which for me is the Cattleya guttata crossed with velutina. What's not to love? Like, this is my top 5 orchids that you must own, in my opinion. And easygoing and fairly easy to grow compared to some other species bifoliate Cattleyas, which have a reputation for being a little bit fussier. Is huge though, so you do need to have a little bit of room on your shelves to make room for it, but I think well worth it in my opinion. Thank you so much for joining me today for these updates, and I hope that you enjoyed the kind of more concise maybe video formatting. Let me know what you think down below. I'm always open to suggestions for how to do these videos because they can get very long and kind of lose people, I think, on the very long videos, as well as myself, to be honest. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and doing this update with me, and I will see you guys all later. Have a great day and happy growing until next time. Bye!